are completely out of touch with reality. And you're right, ABC should...
What precisely transpired? Why did this one incident rock the media and political landscape? And, above all, what does it portend for The View's future? If you thought this program has seen drama before, you're mistaken. Let's dissect everything. Because of how explosive Karoline Leavitt's revelations were, the presenter was hardly able to control herself. Everyone is talking about it now since it was a complete meltdown on live television.
Democrats in the media are now unloading all their nasty attacks on rising Trump White House star and new press secretary, Karoline Leavitt. Watch this.
This is complete chaos. It didn't take long for the mainstream media, Hollywood elites, and especially The View's left-leaning hosts to try to undermine her. They launched one smear campaign after another, employed every strategy in the book to undermine her achievements, and questioned her trustworthiness. But this time, they picked the wrong fight. The assault started quickly once Karoline Leavitt, Trump's press secret, stepped into the political limelight. The tables were turned when Karoline refused to play the victim and responded. They are completely disconnected from reality. The hosts are desperately attempting to save their own reputations after what started as a small-scale attempt to paint her in an unfavorable light utterly backfired. You're right, ABC has to wake up. I promise you, the repercussions is quite severe. Joy Behar, who always presents herself as a supporter of women's liberation, recently exposed her own hypocrisy in the worst possible way. Instead of, although she acknowledged Karoline's political ascent, she ignored her whole career, attributing her achievement to her looks. Yes, and one of the most vocal supporters of women's rights just disparaged another woman for being conservative, wealthy, and young. Even some of The View's loyal viewers couldn't help but notice the moment since it was so cruelly ironic. Now, The View's reputation is severely deteriorating, the internet is in flames, and the response is enormous. She was probably put there because Donald Trump believes she is a 10. You know, if the contradiction weren't so blatantly clear, it would be ridiculous. How can someone disparage a young, accomplished lady while claiming to promote women's rights? Karoline Leavitt wasn't willing to stand by and called them out without hesitation once they were exposed on live television. The opinions panel's reaction was one of utter horror. But hold on, what if Karoline is a 10? Joy Barr and Greg Gutfeld of Fox News both jumped at the chance to answer the question.
These women are completely out of touch with reality. And you're right, ABC should wait.
In classic Gutfeld flair, he showed no restraint as he delivered one of the year's most savage punchlines, reprimanding Joy with a level of razor-sharp brevity that had the audience howling and, let's just say, didn't exactly assist Joy. The internet has been in stitches ever then, but Karoline wasn't done yet. She stepped up her attacks, concentrating on what she called the propaganda apparatus of the Democratic Party. When she talked about day hires, she wasn't holding back. She said that they have two options. Either they follow Trump's lead, or they will be forgotten completely because after Trump is done upending things, they won't have scandals, media-driven distractions, or the usual narrative spinning machine to keep them in the spotlight. Their purported importance. They know it felt like envy because, let's face it, The View's panel is seeing someone younger, smarter, and actually deserving of attention utterly overwhelm them, and they can't tolerate it. It's on borrowed time. After Joy Bear's offensive comments, Whoopi Goldberg intervened in a desperate attempt to save some dignity. She acted like a mother hen, attempting to discipline Karoline as though she were a disobedient kid and accusing her of not tolerating weakness. But let's face it, Goldberg wasn't imparting knowledge. Rather, she was fumbling, and Karolina's line was seen through it in a moment that has since gone viral. Karoline refused to let Whoopi's attempt to combine civil rights and wokeness into one, which was a common strategy of twisting history to fit a narrative. No one on The View seemed to want to address the question, why didn't Whoopi call out Joy Behar if she is such a fervent advocate for women's rights? The finest part of Whoopi's reaction was that it said it all. Precision struck Whoopi down by pointing out the glaring errors in her reasoning. When Joy attributed all of Karoline's success to her looks, why didn't she speak up? Whoopi turned the incident into another assault on Karoline. Maybe because her purported moral compass only points in one direction, rather than holding her own co-host responsible. Why? Because Karoline's true fault was speaking the truth, and expressing an opinion that was simply too strong for her to bear. And this 27-year-old dared to use her first White House press conference to criticize the legacy media for losing the confidence of regular Americans. Whoopi used the oldest strategy in the book, playing a racial card, to shift the discourse away from the real subject at hand and onto identity politics. But she didn't end there. Whoopi intensified her contempt and essentially spoke down to Karoline as though she was unaware of what wokeness was. "It's not a terrible thing to be. That's why we fought, that's what we're fighting for, so that you could stand at that podium," she added. Additionally, she asserted that Karoline was criticizing wokeness because she believed it to be a horrible thing to be and had no true comprehension of what it meant, in order for women of all races, ethnicities, and faiths to knock on that door. The issue is that Karoline called it out because she understands what wokeness is. Karoline was careful to expose the hypocrisy of The View by attempting to link Elon Musk to an assassination attempt, which was one of their most ludicrous allegations to date. Karoline delivered a scathing critique of them for their careless charges, pointing out the absurdity of a program that consistently promotes responsibility while spreading unfounded conspiracy theories. A few years ago, she reminded the audience, these same media personalities were singing a different tune. The shifting objectives and the selective ire Karoline wasn't going to allow The View and the rest of legacy media get away with operating carelessly for years. At this time, the repercussions was severe, and The Viewpoint is so anxious to dominate the story that they will do anything to further its goals. They have controlled public opinion, stifled criticism, and fabricated any narrative that served their own agenda. No responsibility, no repercussions, just never-ending stories designed to influence rather than educate. They owe it to Karoline Leavitt, though, as that age is now abruptly ending. Karolina's refusal to back down is forcing these outlets to answer for their reporting, which is, let's face it, their worst nightmare, because the moment they lose control of the story, their credibility is destroyed. They have officially turned the tables on legacy media, and the public is going crazy. Mainstream media organizations are being held responsible for their years of slanted reporting and outright false information about President Trump for the first time in decades. They are aware that their days of dominating the discourse are numbered based on the total breakdown on The View. When we think your reporting is inaccurate or contains false information regarding this White House, we will call you out. Karoline Leavitt declared, and abruptly made it clear that legacy media's free pass is officially over after decades of the Associated Press and the White House Correspondents Association controlling who gets to ask questions, what narratives are promoted, and who is completely ignored because Black people couldn't get into colleges. Because women could not get into the universities they wanted to attend. This is all but no more. According to Karoline, the days of big media outlets running the show unchecked were ended. She shattered things, not just shaken them up. She then revealed yet another shocking revelation that sent the globe into a complete meltdown. She reinstated press permits for 400,140 journalists whose rights had been unfairly taken away under the Biden administration. This remarkable step toward openness is being praised by many. New Media Voices journalists who aren't scared to genuinely criticize the establishment will now have access to 2 front-row seats that were previously reserved for White House employees. Yes, the View panel is angry because, let's be honest, they don't want their tale to be seriously contested by a news organization. The new media seat will now be the front seat, which is often used by press secretary staff. New media voices who meet the standards and get permission from the U.S. Secret Service to enter the White House complex on time will receive credentials from Karoline's team, which will personally review applications. The panel of View went completely insane. Under this new system, people will just spout out stuff translation because they are afraid, because for the first time in years, they won't be the ones controlling narrative, Whoopi said in her usual holier-than-thou manner. Sunny H. Tin acted as if only the prestigious legacy media should be seated at the table, mocking the notion of letting independent journalists into the room. I don't always agree with their methods, but I want everyone to understand that we can't simply say things no matter what they say. To achieve that, we must cooperate. Whoopi wants to speak about standards when mainstream media, including The View, has been doing the exact same thing for years, twisted narratives, cherry-picking facts, and spewing whatever suits their agenda because Karoline Leavitt is holding them accountable. Let's face it, these presenters live on dictating what the audience should believe. This isn't about journalism, ethics, or attention. The issue is that millions of Americans are turning to alternative news sources as they lose trust in established media. They're worried for the first time in years, but it's not because they care a lot about the truth. By pointing out what millions of Americans already knew, 27-year-old Karoline Leavitt, the youngest press secretary in history, wasn't holding back when she blasted the media for abusing public trust. Legacy channels have propagated outright lies about this president and his family. She raised one point. After years of dominating the discussion, facing criticism, and, based on the total collapse, not managing it properly, the viewpoint is now feeling the heat. Mainstream media sources such as The View have had the luxury of free speech for years. Their political rivals have gaslit the White House and disseminated misleading information. Crystal clear, we will not tolerate the fact that several legacy media outlets in our nation have propagated false information about the president and his family. Those days are officially over since someone is now holding them accountable, even if their audience was never held accountable. Karoline Leavitt, the legendary press secretary who just placed legacy media as a whole on notice, is that someone. And who she replaced, too. Karine Jean-Pierre never missed an opportunity to inform the public that she was the first Black LGBTQ immigrant woman to hold the post, as if identifying were the only quality that mattered. Karoline is proving that being a genuine leader means sticking up for the American people and keeping individuals responsible, not just checking diversity boxes. Does the perspective still use identification cards, even Jen Jean-Pierre's predecessor found the frequent identity-driven message insulting to the role? Naturally, they continue to use the same playbook and hope that no one will notice how weak their arguments are. The View wasn't done, but she's here to do her job, and she's doing it well. They attempted to bait Karoline with a traditional gotcha question regarding illegal immigration after the cheap shots failed to defeat her. Spoiler alert, she didn't even come close to fumbling, despite their belief that they had her trapped. She rewrote the narrative to remind them that law-abiding individuals are valued more in Trump's America than lawbreakers, preventing them from falling into the trap. In real time, their entire argument fell apart, but instead of conceding, they doubled down on their spin and made frantic attempts to distort things. The greater dramatic rage of the story, which they like to act as though Karoline is enjoying, watching them scurry and she sees straight through them. In addition to keeping her position, she is enjoying the pandemonium and the fact that these so-called media elites are finding it difficult to keep up with the reality. Let's face it, this was never about protecting immigrants. They are fighting for justice. They were trying to trip up a woman who was much too astute to fall for their stale left-wing story. Karoline is grinning as she not only takes on The View, but also the whole legacy media machine. Karoline is not only exposing the point of view, but she is also breaking down their whole playbook. She has spent years making sure everyone else does the same, and she is well-versed in the game's mechanics. Karoline Leavitt is shutting them down in real time, which is the finest part. The narrative has been controlled by legacy media, who have twisted facts, selectively highlighted information, and promoted their own agenda. The more they defend themselves, the more they establish their case, and Karoline struck the last blow in the last mic drop. The View has been so focused on pleasing the left for years that they have lost any sense of their purpose. They have served as the Democratic Party's megaphone, repeatedly reciting whatever script they were given without engaging in meaningful discussion or critical thought. Just the same old talking points. They have spent so much time going above and beyond to promote the left's messaging that the moment someone challenges them, they collapse. And Karoline is loving every minute of it, because the viewpoint isn't just being called out. They are being exposed for their hypocrisy and biased, desperate attempts to stay relevant. Now that Karoline is in charge and holding them accountable, they don't know what to do with themselves. Karoline Leavitt not only criticized them, but also forced them to confront their own death in the moment. This is just the beginning, though, since the media environment is evolving, and organizations like The View are desperately attempting to keep control, but they are losing miserably. How long can they keep up this front? That's the real question. Do you believe the power of the mainstream media will end, or will they manage to reclaim it in some way? Please leave a comment below and click the notification bell. Like and subscribe if you would want to see more gruesome breakdowns like this one. This war is far from ended, I promise.